Okay, it started.
வணக்கம்மா. வணக்கம் ஐயா.
ॐ यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तम्हदेवम् आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. Okay. So, until last class, we were doing the 6th chapter, and there's a small portion of the 6th chapter which is left, which I thought I'll cover today. And that portion is, really speaking, not directly related to dhyanam or meditation, but it is more of a general question regarding all the spiritual sadhanas that one is practicing. Arjuna has a question. So this question actually begins from the 32, 34, 36, 37th onwards. So from 37, 3 shlokas in the 6th chapter pertain to the question, and then from the 40th shloka, Bhagavan Krishna answers that question. Okay, so what is the question? So in brief, without reading the shloka and giving you a translation word by word, I'll tell you the gist of the question from Arjuna. So what Arjuna says, looks, there is somebody who is practicing all these sadhanas, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, and before that Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga. So all those sadhanas, spiritual sadhanas, which the Vedas say will eventually lead to mukti or moksham. And as we have repeatedly said, that this is not a very quick process. It takes several janmas. Yeah, we said it takes several janmas. So his question is, what happens when the sadhaka or the spiritual seeker is unable to complete this sadhana in one janma? Will he then have to begin all over again in the next janma, or what is his status? So will all the sadhanas that he has been practicing until now, all of that, will it go waste, or will it be in some form useful and available to him in the next janma? That is the question. Okay. So ayatihi shraddhayopeta yoga ayati shraddhayopeto yoga chalita manasa aprapya but aprapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim krishna gacchati. So aprapya yoga samsiddhim means not having attained the moksham. Here yoga samsiddhi means moksha. Okay, kacchinnobhaya vibhrashta chinnabhram iva nashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanapati. So chinna abhram means, abhram means a cloud, chinna means to be destroyed. So sometimes what happens when you have a small light cloud in the sky, a strong wind can break up that cloud, and that cloud kind of disappears in no time. So Arjuna is asking, so will all the sadhanas that he has been doing till now, will they all be destroyed like the cloud destroyed by the wind? And this is a question only you can answer. Hey Krishna, nobody else can answer. So that is the gist of the three shlokas, 37, 38, and 39. And then from 40 onwards, Krishna answers in 8 shlokas. So 40 to 47, total 8 shlokas, Krishna answers this question. So what he says is, in essence, hey Arjuna, don't worry, nothing that you have, nothing that anyone has performed as a sadhana will be wasted. Nothing will go waste. That is the first answer he gives. Okay. So he says, Partha naiveha namutra vinashastasya vidyate. Nahi kalyanakrit kaschit durgatim tata gachati. So this sadhaka who has been performing all these karma yoga, upasana yoga, and even shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam, if he has not managed to attain that jnanam in one janma, nothing that he has done so far will go waste. All that sadhana will come with him in his next janma. And basically what he says is, he will, after the end of one janma, when he has done all these sadhanas, he will go to some of the higher lokas, Swargam, or, we have 6 lokas above the earth. Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. So 6 lokas are there. So he will go to one of those 6 higher lokas and enjoy the comforts of that janma, and then return back to the earth, and either he will be born in a wealthy family where, in addition to being wealthy, the parents also have the appropriate samskara, so that he can pursue his spiritual, quest without any worry about financial well-being or whatever. He can work full time on his spiritual sadhanas. That is one option. Or he may be born in a family where the father himself will be a jnani and the father can teach him. So these are the kind of janmas that this sadhaka will take. Okay, so that is prapya punyakritam lokan ushitva shashwati samaha shuchinam srimatam gehe yoga bhrashto bhijayate. So here Krishna gives a name to such a sadhaka. He calls him yoga bhrashta. Yoga bhrashta means one whose yoga sadhana has been left incomplete, or which has been broken in the middle. So that is yoga bhrashta. So such a yoga bhrashta, chuchinam srimatam gehe. So the person whose child he will become, that person will be a wealthy person and also be a person of good character, so that they also have an appropriate environment in their home for pursuing spiritual sadhanas. Otherwise, yoginameva kule bhavati dhimatam. Or he will be born in a family which is full of scholars and jnanis, and where the environment in the house will be conducive for spiritual sadhanas. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate paurvadehikam. So in that janma, he will get an opportunity to refresh his memories on the previous janma's teachings and sadhanas, and will be able to continue with the sadhana as though nothing has happened. Okay, tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate paurvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuyah samsiddhau kurunandana. Yatate means he will continue to perform those sadhanas which he had left halfway in the previous janma, and that paurvadehikam, means whatever samskaras he had in the previous janma, where he continued where he had the yogic sadhanas. Okay. Purvabhyasena tenaiva hriyate yavashopi saha. Okay, so because of the samskaras from that previous janma, he will be helplessly drawn towards spirituality. And this is also a kind of a pramanam for what we call, what do you call that? Child prodigy. You have a lot of children who, even at the small age of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, display a tremendous amount of genius in one field or the other. You have children who can identify some 200, 300 ragas, just by listening once. Or there are chess prodigies. Now today we are seeing some 3-year-old kid becoming the youngest grandmaster or something like that. They got a FIDE rating of 1500 or something. Okay, these are all child prodigies. Or you find somebody becoming, Mandolin Srinivas, for instance. Mandolin Srinivas is no more, of course, but he was mandolin vidwan even at the young age of 6 or 7. And you have so many such examples where a very young child picks up some skill to a great extent, and one wonders how is it possible. And all that is possible because this child has been, maybe a chess master or a musician in the previous janma, and all that samskara has come into this janma also. So this section of Bhagavad Gita is also some kind of a pramanam for child prodigies. Okay, so prayatnat yatamanastu yogi samshuddha kilbishah aneka janma samsiddha tato yati parangatim. Okay, so at the end of that janma, he will successfully complete his spiritual sadhanas and become a mukta purusha or liberated person. So that is the answer that Krishna gives in these 8 shlokas at the end of the 6th chapter. Okay, so with that we complete the 6th chapter. I didn't, as I said, I didn't go through a word by word explanation, but broadly I think we covered most of the important teachings of this chapter. We'll give a short pause now. Any questions or discussions we can take up, or else we can move on to another topic. Any questions, anybody? Okay. No doubts, no curiosity. Can we switch on to another topic? Yes, sir. Rahul ji.
Mr. Vasuji, yeah. So I have a question. You said that is a pramana of child prodigy,
Yeah.
and but the in lot of cases the child prodigy itself faces challenges while doing his sadhana or whatever he is parangat in. So how would you see that, and what would you say about it? What are your thoughts about it?
See, these two are not directly related. See, you may have the samskaras from the previous janma and still face challenges in current janma, because the current janma is also governed by other prarabdha karmas. So it's a mix, right? So prarabdha karma is not always 100% punyam. Especially, we say the human birth is a middle ground. Generally human beings have a 50-50 more or less mix of punyam and papam. That is why you are born as a human being, but then being born as a human being itself is a blessing. Okay, in Bhagavad Gita itself, the Bhagavan Krishna says in several places, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. So that is one proof that there are, a spiritual pursuit takes several janmas. And then in Viveka Chudamani, Bhagavan Sankaracharya says, Durlabham Trayamevaitat Devanugraha Hetukam Manushyatvam Mukshutvam Mahapurusha Samshrayaha. So there are some 72 lakh species of living beings. So to be born as a human being has a probability of 1 by 72 lakh. If you are familiar with probability and statistics from your mathematics studies in school, you will know what is the probability of 1 in 72 lakhs. Okay, that is the rarity with which one can get a Manushya Janma, human birth. And so being born as a human being is not a guarantee that you will be liberated in that Janma. It is a chance given to you. It is all a question of how you make use of that chance. And that particular Janma of the sadhaka might have some papam from some previous Janma also, because of which he may face some obstacles. So there is no guarantee that this person will have a very smooth ride without any obstacles. That is not what Bhagavan says. Bhagavan says he will be born in an environment which is conducive to pursuing spiritual sadhanas. Okay, in Bhagavatam there is a story of a certain Jada Bharata. Okay, a certain Jada Bharata who was a king. Bharata, the name of Bharata is a king. He was a very dharmic ruler, and at some point he gave up his kingdom and went to the forest to pursue spirituality. But then, unfortunately for him, even though he was a very successful spiritual sadhaka, he developed an affection towards a deer cub, deer, Hiran. Okay, so at some point he became so distracted towards the Hiran that he was meditating on the Hiran all the time. And then when he died, he was still thinking of the Hiran, and so he had a next Janma as a Hiran. Okay, but then the Hiran, whose Atma was actually the Bharata, it had the samskaras from the previous Manushya Janma. So it would actually go to some ashram where the rishis are chanting Vedas, and it will listen to all that Veda Patha and all that. And then it took him 1 or 2 more Janmas before he actually became liberated. So this is just a story to show that, while you might be a sadhaka in one Janma, if there are some obstacles which prevent you from getting liberated, you have to overcome that maybe in 1 or 2 more Janmas. Okay, I don't know if I answered your question appropriately.
You answered it perfectly, sir. But I have one more tertiary question in this regard. It might sound a little bit foolish, but still, I would ask it anyway. So, like you said that the Raja was meditating on the deer, and that's why he had the next Janma as a deer itself. Similarly, I heard somewhere else, and I think I read somewhere else that you should not have pets at home because of this attachment thing, that you get attached to them, and then in the next Janma you have this attachment, this entanglement as well. And my question is related to it, because these days I was seeing and showing my kids also these mini cows. I forgot the name of the breed of the cow, and they were keeping it as a pet. So how do we look at this perspective? That would be my question. Are you getting me? Yeah.
Why do you have to blame pets? Okay, you can get attached to anything. Okay, you can get attached to anything. In fact, that is actually the subject which is handled in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So after we finish this discussion, maybe we can visit this 8th chapter, and there some more teachings are there. So in the Upanishads also, in the Vedas and Shastras also, it is mentioned that for an Ajnani, for a person who is not a Brahmagyani, who has not understood the Advaitic teaching, the thought the thought that he entertains at the time of his death, at the exact time when the Atma leaves the body, that thought will have a solid influence on his next Janma. Okay, so that is why it is important in Yoga Shastra and in all spiritual sadhanas to, train your mind in such a way that at the time of your breathing the last, you have the thought about Bhagavan in some form or the other. That will ensure you that you don't get into a punarjanma problem, whether that you will not be born as an animal or something else in the next janma. So that is clearly stated in the Upanishads and in the Shastras, and that is also the same point Bhagavan Krishna brings in the 8th chapter. So it is not just about a pet or this or that. Any thought, any material thought that you may entertain at the last minute of your life will have a very strong influence on how your next Janma is going to take shape. I hope that addresses your question.
Dhanyavad, sir. Dhanyavad.
Okay. Chandra Garu, you had your hand raised.
I don't already because you answered my question like Raja Bharata story. That was my question actually. Yeah, you answered like if you are attached to any particular thing, what happens? Like, do we attend the same? Like, if I'm attached to some particular emotion or something, will we get reborn as a something like that? So you already explained that
Yeah.
with Rahulji's answer.
Great. So that's okay. Shvetambari ma'am, please.
Yes, sir. You just said that at the last moment of, at the time of your death, what you think is very important. But in other way, isn't it a shortcut? So if I am in my whole life, I don't do any sadhana, and at the moment of death, if I think of God, will it lead me to moksha?
Logical question, but tell me, how many people know when they are going to die?
Nobody knows that.
Yeah,
But
nobody knows.
but
So
if you sense
it's a
something,
lottery that you're taking. So if you say,
Mhm.
I can waste my entire janma and do all sorts of things, and at the last minute I'll remember Narayana or Shiva or whatever, that is actually a very risky thing. And because nobody informs you in advance that this person is going to die on so and so date, on so and so time, and all that, that is something nobody will predict. So that is exactly the reason why we say in the Shastras that if you cultivate this habit of thinking about Ishvara and all those divine thoughts and spiritual thoughts all the time, you basically reduce the risk of thinking about something else at the time of death, because your normal thought process itself is directed towards divinity. So the chances that the person will be thinking about spirituality and divinity at the time of breathing the last is greatly increased, because even under normal circumstances this person thinks about spirituality and divinity. Okay, let's say you are a Krishna upasaka or a Devi upasaka, then you make it a practice to meditate upon your Ishta Devata whenever you find a few minutes. Anytime you have a few minutes, you just say, I've seen a lot of people who carry some kind of a japamala, and anytime they have some 5 minutes, 10 minutes free time, they'll immediately start doing that meditation, whatever nama they are meditating on, nama japam that they do. And so that the reason why such a practice is good is because this person is making sure that his thoughts are always saturated with thoughts about Ishta Devata and Shastra and spirituality and all that. This rule is not applicable to someone who has gone through Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. This is only applicable for Ajnanis. Okay, once a person has gone through Jnana Yoga, which is Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, once that person has understood Aham Brahmasmi and all those Advaitic teachings, this rule about the thought at the last minute is not applicable there. That is only for Ajnanis. You please remember that.
Okay, so then other way around. If I have done enough of sadhana, and at the time of my last moments, I am scared or I'm filled with some thoughts of no, only the thoughts of dying, and I forget to take the Ram Nam or maybe the Krishna Nam. Then is it in a way saying that I will be stuck in the afterlives and the punarjanmas?
See, if you have not understood the Jnana Yoga teaching, the Advaitic teaching, what we call Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, then you belong to the Ajnani category. And so for the Ajnani category, the thought at the last minute will play a role. But if you have already done a lot of sadhanas during the rest of your life, then you will not be punished because of this last minute thought. You will still get the credit or the advantage of the samskaras that you have collected. But there could be some minor problems which you will eventually overcome because of the punyam. There is no hard and fast answer to this, except that these are all probabilities. The probability being either weak or medium or strong, and it's always a mix. It's always a mix of various things. As I said, all human beings come with 50% papam, 50% punyam. And what kind of papam is there in your bucket, what kind of punyam is there in your bucket, will influence the course of the next life. Okay. So if you have been consistently performing some sadhana, then the chances are, again the probability, the chances are very high that at the time of your breathing last also, you would have those sadhana related thoughts. It's very unlikely that you will not have the sadhana related thoughts. But then if something like that happens, it will not be a major disaster. That's what I can say.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. That answered
Okay.
my question. Yes.
Yeah. So Kalpi SH, आपका सवाल.
Kalpita here, sir. I just
Kalpita. Okay.
I just wanted to thank you. I join only sometimes, and I'm not really very. I don't know many things, but I just want to add because the discussion came up. There is this story we know since which we hear about the Brahmana Ajamil, who was not really doing. I mean, I think initially was a sadhaka, then he got diverted, and but at the end his youngest son was very dear to him. He had named him Narayana.
Yeah.
And at the moment of his death, because he was not calling Narayana, he was calling his youngest son because he was so dear to him.
Yeah.
But still he attained moksha. So there was this story I remember, but I don't know the details. Maybe you
Okay.
can explain, but
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that because
Yeah.
at the moment of death he called Narayana.
Yeah.
Vishnu himself came and liberated him. So
Yeah.
there was some.
Vishnu Dutas came. Yeah. There was a fight. There was a quarrel
Okay.
between the Yamadutas and Vishnu Dutas. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Kalpita, for bringing this up.
I
I
don't know the
did.
details, but I
No,
remember.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
some, yeah,
That's fine.
yeah.
The story of Ajamila comes in Srimad Bhagavatam, and so he went to Vishnu Loka. Okay, so he did not get moksha. So
Okay.
he went to Vishnu Loka, which is not necessarily getting moksha directly. Again, this point about Vishnu Loka is also discussed in 8th chapter. So maybe we should go to the 8th chapter after the discussion. So, but I personally treat this Ajamila story as some kind of a glorification of Nama Japa. Okay, it is some kind of a glorification of Nama Japa, exactly like how Krishna told in the 12th chapter that dhyana karma phala tyaga tyaga shanti anantaram. So karma phala tyaga is even better than dhyanam and jnanam. He says in 12th chapter that is more of a glorification of karma phala tyaga. So I would also treat the Ajamila story as a glorification of Nama Japa, Nama japa will take you to higher loka, no doubt, but it is not a guarantee for liberation. So we have to understand the two, the difference between the two. Okay, we will talk about this higher loka and the connection to liberation in the 8th chapter discussion. But I think for now, we will keep this Ajamila story little aside.
Okay, sir.
Rahul ji.
Sir, I have a question about japa mala. You said that keeping a japa mala and doing japa. Uh, so I was just wondering, so if somebody does japa without counting and just keeps on doing it, does that make a difference? Because keeping a
Absolutely
japa
no
mala
difference,
means you have
sir.
to.
All that is required is you have to focus your mind on the namam. Okay. If you keep count, it is for your own satisfaction, because some people have a quota. I have to do this many number of japam every day and all that. Typically, if you meet any ISKCON follower, the ISKCON followers have some kind of a daily target for their japam. So they always count and keep count and track of their japa count. But it is not mandatory. You can perform japam without counting as often and as frequently as possible, and it's a good practice. So don't worry about the japamala. If you don't have one, you have your fingers. If you don't want to count, then all the better. Just keep doing it.
Dhanyawad.
Okay, right? So if there are no more questions, we'll quickly go to the 8th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, and see the main teachings there. Okay, so the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is actually a kind of a outlier chapter, I would say, at least from an Advaitic point of view. Because the rest of the chapters of Bhagavad Gita, where the Bhagavan teaches something or the other, all those teachings are talking about what we call Jivan Mukti and Sadhyo Mukti. So Jivan Mukti means you become a jnani in this life and enjoy a liberated state while you are still in this body. And then when that jnani eventually dies at the end of his prarabdha karma, he avoids any further rebirth. So that is called Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. But this 8th chapter alone is an exception, or what we call in Sanskrit apavada, because the teachings of the 8th chapter is about what we call krama mukti. Krama mukti. Okay, and what is krama mukti? Krama mukti means at the end of this life, the sadhaka travels to a higher loka. It could be Brahma loka, or if you are a Vaishnavite follower, you will call it Vishnu loka. But what we call in Shastras the Satya loka, he will go to that highest loka, and there he will go through Vedanta Shravana Manana Nididhyasanam, where Brahmaji himself will be the teacher. The four-headed Brahma will teach this person Vedantic knowledge, and there he will spend the rest of that Janma in Brahmaloka. And then when the Brahmaloka itself dissolves at the end of Mahapralayam, at the time of Mahapralayam, he will become liberated from there. It's a little like launching these satellites. The satellites are not launched in one stage. There is a rocket which has 3 or 4 stages, and then for each stage of travel, one particular rocket is used, the fuel is used, and then that module drops down, and then the next module takes it further up, and so on. So something like that. So this Janma, this person is projected unto Satyaloka, and from Satyaloka he reaches moksha. So it's kind of a 2-stage process. Okay, and who will be eligible for that kind of a krama mukti? that is the description. So it is basically what is called the sadhaka is actually a upasaka. He's not a normal sadhaka. He's a upasaka, and he has been performing upasana throughout his life. And you know, this upasana, there are different types of upasanas mentioned in the Shastras, where you take a diksha or upadesha from a guru and then follow certain ritualistic steps and then meditate and so on. So that form of upasana is in this 8th chapter, called, again it's called yoga only. But then the yoga here is not the normal yoga we know, but it is the upasana yoga. Okay, where is it? Okay. Sarvadvarani samyamya manohridi nirudhya cha. That is the portion where the Krishna talks about how that yogi, continues his meditation. Bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva paramam purusham divyam yati parthanu chintayan. The 7th shloka is something that you will find in many places. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhya cha. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara. So think of me all the time. That is the hint Bhagavan gives, because if you are thinking of Bhagavan all the time, you don't have to worry about whether you will think about Bhagavan at the time of death or not, because thinking about Bhagavan becomes your habit. So automatically at the time of death also, this person will be thinking about Bhagavan. Okay, but the upasana that the 8th chapter talks about is this yogi, because of so many years of upasana balam, he will actually have a kind of a premonition when his end is supposed to come. Okay, so this yogi will actually have an idea about when his end is going to come, or in some rare cases, the yogi can also make sure that his end comes, by controlling this breathing and all that. Okay, so they are supposed to sit in Padmasana at the time of death. At the time of death, they are supposed to sit in Padmasana, control their breathing in such a way that the prana is held at the top of the head. What we call Brahmarandhram. If you know a little bit of anatomy, and if you have seen the picture of a skull, or if you have actually seen a real skull, there is a small gap at the top of the skull where some 2 or 3 bones come together. And at the joint of these 3 bones, you will have a very, very small hole. And in fact, that is also the place where the baby would have received the food from the mother's umbilical cord when the baby was inside the mother's womb. So if you touch the head of a newborn baby or a 2 months, 3 months old baby, the top of the head will be very soft. And that portion hardens over a period. So by the time the baby is 2 years or 3 years old, that portion becomes solidified. And that is a portion where you will see some 3 or 4 bones actually coming together like a joint, and there'll be a very small hole there. And that hole is called Brahmarandhram. And the sadhaka or the upasaka is supposed to direct his prana to the top of his head, at the top of his skull, and make the prana leave the body through that hole. Okay, and all the while he must be making the japam of that mantra, whatever he has learned. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it says Om. Om ityekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusparan. That is the sloka. Om ityekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusparan. 13th shloka. So there Krishna says this, an upasaka will be chanting the Om or Omkara mantra and controlling his breathing and prana and making sure that the prana is directed to the top of the head, and then the prana leaves the body from the top of the head. And when such an exit happens, that person's prana, that person's atma will travel through what is called Shukla Gati. You know, in the Shastras, we talk about Shukla Gati and Krishna Gati. So, this person will travel through Shukla Gati and reach Brahmaloka, and there he will have his next Janma in Brahmaloka. He will have an opportunity to attend Brahmaji's classes. You know, Brahmaji will be holding Vedanta classes there. And you know, he's got 4 heads. So he can teach from all the 4 sides. So he doesn't have any limitations like hunger, thirst and all that. You know, because in Brahmaloka, the people are supposed to be free from hunger and thirst and tiredness. So one can listen to Brahmaji's teachings non-stop, continuously. Okay, so maybe Brahmaji gives repeat classes also, I don't know. But there the sadhaka, the upasaka will have the opportunity to listen to Vedantic teachings from Brahmaji. There he will become a jnani, and he will then spend the rest of his life there in Brahmaloka, and then when the Brahmaloka itself dissolves at the time of Mahapralaya, he will be liberated. Okay, that is the Kramamukti sequence. Okay, but then there are also other upasakas who may go to Brahmaloka but not choose to attend Brahmaji's Vedanta classes, and so they spend some time and return to the next Janma as an Ajnani. That is also possible. Okay, so somebody, Rahul, was asking, you know, what happens when there are obstacles in the next Janma? This is actually one of those obstacles. You know, this person had the punyam to go all the way to Brahmaloka and listen to, you know, the teachings from none other than Brahmaji, who is actually the author of the Vedas and who is a liberated person himself. Is the best teacher one can think of, and having gone to Brahmaloka, he fritters away this opportunity, and then, you know, he spends this time with a lot of maja, this, that and all that, and then he returns to a lower loka for the next Janma. This is also an obstacle. Okay, so when you can have obstacles in Brahmaloka, what to talk about, you know, obstacles in this loka? You can have obstacles. Yeah. So that is Krama Mukti for you. Okay, so this is the core teaching of the 8th chapter, but there are a lot of other things that come in the 8th chapter also, which is probably not so important from a, you know, spirituality point of view. For instance, there is a shloka which says Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam Teho Ratra Vido Janaha. Okay, 17th shloka. So that shloka basically talks about the life of Brahma. What is the life of Brahmaji? Okay, so Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu. So here the word Yuga means Chatur Yuga. Okay, so 1000 Chatur Yugas duration is 1 12-hour day for Brahma. 1 Chatur Yuga is 4.32 million years. Okay, 1 Kali Yuga is 432,000 years, and 1 Chatur Yuga is 10 times that. So 4.32 million years is 1 Chatur Yuga, and 1000 Chatur Yugas is 4.32 billion years. That is the 12-hour daylight period of Brahmaji. And a similar duration is the night time of Brahmaji. So 1.64 billion years is one 24-hour day in Brahmaji's calendar. Like that, he has 360 days in a year and 120 years. You can do the multiplication after you finish the class. So it will come to several trillion years. Okay, in fact, 3-digit trillion or something. That will be the lifetime of one Brahmaji. And within that lifetime, there are different smaller playas where the universe gets destroyed and rebuilt. And then once that lifetime of Brahmaji is over, this Brahmaji becomes liberated and the next Brahmaji takes his seat. So Brahmaji basically is a position. It's like prime minister or president or whatever. So it's a position, and there are different jivas who are waiting in queue to be the Brahmaji in the future kalpas or future srishtis. So that is the teaching in one of the few shlokas, in 8th chapter. Okay, and then there are a few others which I am not covering because they are not very important from a spirituality point of view. So one point that comes in the early 4th or 3rd shloka of this, not 3rd, maybe 4th or 5th, Krishna says that the jivas contribute towards the creation of the universe. Okay, so that point is also, Aksharam Brahma Paramam Swabhavodhyatma Muchyate Bhuta Bhavodbhavakaraha Visargaha Karma Sangitaha. That line, Bhuta Bhavodbhavakaraha Visargaha Karma Sangitaha. In that line, the meaning is the universe that gets created in every cycle of creation is not something that Bhagavan decides on his own free will. Bhagavan has to create such a universe, such a set of lokas, which will be able to accommodate and address the karmic requirements of the jivas who will live in that universe. Okay, so if you have a karmic, requirement to be flying around the world, so you have to be then born in a universe where flights are available. Otherwise, you can't fly, right? So your karma expects you to fly, but you don't have any flights. So how can you live in that world? Or if your karma says you are supposed to be driving a Formula 1 car, so you have to be then born in a universe where Formula 1 cars are available. You can take everything for that, So you get born into a universe which is going to offer you all those facilities which your karma requires you to enjoy or suffer. So the jiva has a contribution in creation of this universe. That is the point in the second line of the 3rd shloka. Okay, so I think these are some of the key points from the 8th chapter. We can open up for discussion if there are questions. Okay, are you people thinking about what to ask, or is there a kind of blank mind?
I think all are started calculating the Brahma's age.
Yeah. It will be a big number. It will be some 13-digit, 14-digit number. It doesn't matter because our human life is just a 3-digit number in years. So it will be 3-digit if you are lucky. Otherwise, it's a 2-digit number. So why bother?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had asked you quite some time ago if there is a hierarchy in all the gods,
Yeah.
saying it sort of, and now, there is Brahma, and when Brahma gets dissolved or destroyed or whatever, the whole universe gets destroyed. So he is also not there anymore. And above him, there is also a Parabrahma. And the Parabrahma is that the supreme personality of Godhead? That is the supreme being.
Okay.
And so there is, in my eyes, some kind of some kind of a level, one
Okay.
is above the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There is a level, but not
yeah,
in the way you think, because long back in the first or second session, I talked about Paramarthika Satyam and Vyavaharika Satyam. And in English, when you translate it, it is the absolute truth and a relative truth or transactional truth. Okay. So the Parabrahma that you talk about exists at the absolute level, whereas the Brahmaji who becomes a liberated person at the end of the Mahapralaya is at the transactional level. Okay. So it's a little like the relationship between your dream friend when you are dreaming and your real body when you are asleep on the bed. So what kind of relationship do you have? The two of you have two different levels of reality. Your dream friend will disappear when you wake up, but you will continue to exist even after you wake up. And you, in fact, did exist at the time of dreaming also, but you are not aware of it. Okay. So in the dream, you think you are different, and the dream friend that you meet in the dream is a different object. But really speaking, all of you are creation of your own mind. So there is an essential unity between you, the dreamer, and your dream friend you meet in the dream, but you don't know that. But when you wake up, you know that your dream friend really existed only in your mind. So that is two different levels of reality. And in this context, you, the waker, is the absolute reality, relatively speaking, and the dream friend and the dream process was a relative transactional reality. You just transfer this whole analogy to the real level. All that we are experiencing in this world, in this life right now, is a transactional truth. And the Param Brahma that you talked about, the Paramatma that you talked about, is the absolute truth, which is not touched by this transactional world. So if you can't make that switch, then I think you have to go back to the previous session's teachings and reflect again, because this is the core teaching of Advaita. The core teaching of Advaita is that the transactional reality is like a higher dream, and there is a higher waker. In fact, there's only one waker. That's what I said in in the session 2 weeks before. My essential nature and your essential nature and the essential nature of everybody else in this call, it is just the same essential Atma. We are all just reflections of that one Paramatma. And I also gave the example of that mirror placed behind the Shivalinga in the Shiva temple. Just like that one lamp in the middle gets reflected in all these mirrors, we are all just reflections of this one Paramatma. And so the hierarchy is there, but not the way you are thinking, because that Paramatma is at a higher level of reality and Brahmaji is at a transactional level. So what I would say is, again, there is this, what I was, I don't know if I covered this. There is a Vishwa, Taijasa, Pragnya, then Virat, Hiranyagarbha, and Ishvara. There are six, six, I would say, entities. Basically, one is an individual level and one is a cosmic level. So Vishwa is the name given to the consciousness associated with the waking body. Taijasa is the name given to the consciousness associated with the dream body. And Pragnya is the name given to the consciousness associated with the Karana Shariram that you experience in your deep sleep state. So these three are at the individual level, Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. And the corresponding cosmic consciousness is the consciousness or Paramatma associated with the visible world is Virat. The consciousness associated with the Sukshma Prapancha, or what we call the subtle universe, that is called Hiranyagarbha. And then the consciousness associated with the Karana Prapancha, or what we also call Maya, is Ishvara. And Paramatma, the pure consciousness, is none of these six. It is the one and only consciousness which is not associated with any of these bodies or prapanchas. So there is a seventh entity which is the Paramatma, which we call Purusha, and which we give some other names also. We call it Akshara, and in another Upanishad it is called Bhuma or Bhuman. It is different from the Bhuma, from where Bhumi comes. That's not the same thing. Bhuman. So there are different words. Yeah. So yeah, this is my initial answer, but you probably have follow-up questions. I'll just quickly go to Rahul and then come back to you, Shubhuji. Yeah, Rahul.
Sir, two questions I have. One, what is the meaning of Godheads? What the ISKCON guys say? Is it meaning a Devta or something else?
See, this word Godhead is very frequently used by ISKCON people. Okay. ISKCON
Correct.
made it popular, but I think a lot of others have also adopted that thing. So when you cannot accept a Nirguna Brahma, the Nirgunam Brahma of Advaita is the most controversial thing in the world of philosophy. None of the other schools accept a Nirguna Brahma. And what we say is, Brahman, really speaking, is pure consciousness with no qualities or attributes. But some schools of philosophy cannot accept it, so they have to give a form to that Parabrahma and say this is Krishna, Rama, Devi, whatever. So those people who provide a name and shape and form to that Parabrahma use this word Godhead. But we don't use the word Godhead in Advaita. Because in Advaita, even the word Ishvara is a less real entity compared to Atma or Paramatma. That's a major difference between the Advaitic line of approaching Vedanta versus all the other schools like Visishta Advaitam or Dvaitam or even Sankhya, Yoga, everybody. Okay. So that was one question. What's the second question?
My second question was, you were talking about that area in the skull, in the head, where the joints are,
Yeah.
and from where the do we then do meditate on this while doing Nam Japa, or how is it? What is the process?
No. See, that chapter, whatever is described in that chapter, in today's world, hardly anybody practices it because that requires a very high level of discipline. You should have gone through a very strict initiation under the guidance of somebody who's come in that line. And so that's not something you can casually undertake and do. Please don't even try it. Okay. Don't even try it. I just mentioned it as a kind of general knowledge for understanding the 8th chapter. It that kind of a strict upasana is beyond the scope of anybody in, I would say, in this circle. Okay, unless there is some real serious sadhaka in this group which I don't know about. Those kind of upasanas are very stringent. So normal nama japa doesn't require any of those things. Okay, so please be careful.
Okay, good.
Yeah. No, Shubhuji.
Yes, thank you again. So all these names for the Supreme Personality or the Supreme Soul or the Paramatma there are many names for him, right? Like
Yeah.
I see in chapter 4 Adhiyajna or Purusha. So it's basically one and the same. Is that right?
Okay, before I
Pure
answer that
consciousness.
question,
Yeah.
answer that question, can you confirm that you are carrying an ISKCON version of Bhagavad Gita?
Yes, I am. I have 3 versions of Bhagavad Gita, but the ones with the English translations is ISKCON.
Okay, yeah. So ISKCON, if you are listening to me and following ISKCON, your confusions will be confounded. Okay.
Okay.
So we are in completely different frameworks. Okay.
Okay.
So I have nothing
Yeah.
against ISKCON. We visit the ISKCON temple in Bayern. There is a place called Yandelsbrunn where there is a Narasimha temple. It's run by ISKCON. We visit the temple regularly. But apart from visiting the temple, I don't follow any of their teachings. Okay. So if you have, I mean, I mentioned this last week also. If you are listening to too many lectures from too many different schools of thought, you will end up in confusion. So since, good or bad, you have started coming to my sessions, and I happen to be an Advaitic teacher. So it's unless you want to completely quit this and go to ISKCON, that's okay. But as long as you're listening to my lectures, don't mix up ISKCON teachings.
No, I'm just looking for a good translation of the Bhagavad Gita because I'm not very
No,
fluent in
I
Sanskrit,
can
and that was the only
suggest.
reason.
I can suggest.
And besides, I have your script that you have given us, which is also very detailed, but it is more
See,
teaching about the Advaitic side of it, and so.
if you have the stamina to listen to some 140, 150 hours of lectures, I can share my Bhagavad Gita teaching recordings from 2017 to 2021. Okay. So
Yes.
just like I shared the Vivek Chudamani recordings, I can share the Bhagavad Gita teachings. Or if you are more comfortable reading books, please look for a Bhagavad Gita from Chinmaya Mission. Swami Chinmayananda has given discourses on Bhagavad Gita. Swami
Okay.
Dayananda Saraswati will be a very good source. In fact, my guru is a direct disciple of Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and Swami Dayananda Saraswati is a direct disciple of Chinmayananda. So Chinmayananda, Dayananda Saraswati, that stream, you can pick up any Bhagavad Gita book. But what I don't know is whether they have a single book which covers all the chapters.
Okay. But if you would share your, I don't even know if it's possible sharing so many hours online, but if that is possible, that will be good, because I also don't like the ISKCON teachings. I picked up this book because it was handy and it was available here, and that's why I have it. But I'm not very keen on ISKCON at all.
Okay.
I just don't know. In all, I know there are lots of words for the supreme, for this supreme consciousness that is above everything or in everything. But what I really don't understand is all these different gods and Brahma and our gods that we all worship. How they stand, and especially Krishna, how they stand towards this consciousness, towards this all-pervading consciousness. Where does Krishna stand in all this? Is he the same, or is he in a different position? Is he also an acting part that changes his form and could be present and not be present as it was in the Bhagavad Gita? Or where does he stand in this constellation?
Okay, so this is again the result of mixing up these two frames. Okay,
Probably, yes.
so in the Advaitic frame, Krishna, Rama, Devi, Shiva, Anjaneya, whatever God with form that you worship, they are all some kind of elementary school level entities. Okay, so it is like a doorway or entry for you to enter the field of spirituality. And I think I mentioned this also in one of the earlier I think it was part of the 12th chapter explanation. This worshipping Krishna, worshipping Rama, worshipping Shiva or Devi, what we call Eka Rupa Devata Upasana. That's the name my guru gives. Eka Rupa Devata Upasana. that is just a starting point. From there, one has to expand one's outlook and learn to look at this whole world as a manifestation of Ishvara. That is then called Aneka Rupa Upasana or Vishwarupa Upasana. And that's the second step. And from there, one has to again graduate to worshipping a Arupa Devata, Arupa Upasana. And the typical example that we give is worshipping or meditating on sky, space, Akasha. So if you are able to meditate on Akasha, then you have kind of refined your mental capabilities to that much higher level. And from Akasha to Nirgunam Brahma is just one small step. Okay, and in parallel, you have to learn to understand the Vedantic teachings from an Advaitic framework. Okay, and that's what I also mentioned in one of the earlier classes, that anything that you objectify is not your Atma. Anything that you can objectify with your five senses is not your Atma. So we have this mantra in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad called Neti Neti. Na iti, na iti. That means whatever you are experiencing as an object, you just negate. Negate. This is not Atma. This is not Atma. This is not Atma. And finally, once you have negated everything, something remains. What is it that remains? It is the negator. The negator cannot be negated. Okay. So once you have understood this, that after negating everything, the negator remains, try to focus your attention on the negator. Okay. Alternately, I give another exercise, to whoever listens to my lectures. You try to meditate for a few minutes. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you have stamina for. The exercise in those 10 minutes is not to do any mantra japam or anything. It is just to close your eyes, find a quiet place in the house where there is no noise or some small minimum noise, and just watch what kind of thoughts enter your mind. You will find lot of thoughts will keep coming and going, Just follow the thoughts only to the extent they come and leave. Don't follow the thought outside, and when the thought leaves, don't run along with it. Just be a witness to all the thoughts in your mind. After you have done this for a few minutes, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then start turning your attention from the thought to the person watching these thoughts. Turn your attention to the witness of the thoughts. Try to do that. Because you cannot really objectify the witness, because that witness is nothing but your true Atma. You cannot objectify it, but you can get a feel for it. This is the Atma that is witnessing all the thoughts, and then that is what the Vedantic teaching is all about. That is the Atma, the Paramatma. This Atma that is inside you, witnessing all the thoughts, is none other than the Paramatma. And that Paramatma really has no shape or form, and that is pure consciousness. Okay, maybe whoever wants to try that, can try that and come back to me in the next week and tell me what their experience was.
Thank you. That has made it clearer, actually. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we are 9 minutes past 9. So I think it's a good place to stop. Anyone having questions, please note it down and come back to me at the beginning of next class. I think next week and the week after will be the 2 last sessions in this calendar year. After that, we'll have a break, and then we will reconvene in 2025. So any questions people want to clear up, maybe use the time to next week and the week after to get these questions sorted out. Okay. So with your kind permission, I'll chant the closing prayers and we can then conclude the call. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Sarvesham Swastirbhavatu Sarvesham Shantirbhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarvepi Sukhinas.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you.
धन्यवाद जी.